I believe that our personal growth will lead us, or is what will lead us to financial success, business success, success as entrepreneurs. And on top of that, I believe that most people don't fully grasp that concept. They want to get tactical about business and wealth and entrepreneurship, but what we need, or what we have learned we should have done, and what we're currently doing, is really diving deep on that personal side. And now that we've done that, it's all starting to build momentum and progress for us on a business perspective, or from a business perspective. So, Josh, how do you feel about that belief?
My mind just went off in 8 different directions on that.
Oh, God.
I'm gonna have to corral my thoughts. I
That's what
I
we're here
agree
for.
with you. I mean, it's for so long I lived in a way that I thought that fixing, and I didn't even really realize this at the time, but I thought that fixing the symptoms was growth and was going to get me happiness and success and all that kind of stuff. What I realize now is that I need to take, 100 steps back and go to the root of the problem. And in that, that started me in early 2021 of hiring my first mindset coach. And then later that year, hiring a second and joining Emerge, part of GoBundance. And then from there, I hired, I think, four, maybe five additional coaches.
Jeez. Were you
Kept
an
doing my
addict? Were
own.
you like a coaching addict?
Well, I was, and then it was actually at the very beginning of the year last year where I was like, I took a step back and I'm like, whoa, what am I doing? Like
Yeah,
I'm packing all this information in and all these realizations and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not allowing it to settle. I'm not allowing it to take hold. I'm just
I
on to
remember
the
that
next thing.
conversation.
And and so yeah, it was. I felt like it was like an addiction. It was like I needed to explore all these different rabbit holes of myself that, quite frankly, I'd never really explored to that depth in the past,
Mm.
or maybe not even ever. And one of those conversations that really started me questioning if I should continue on that path of just hiring coaches is that I had a conversation with Marty Noki, and he had mentioned that I think way too much with my brain and not enough with my heart.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but something clicked. I was like, that I had never thought of that before, and I knew enough inside me that something felt right, that I knew that I needed to explore that thought a little bit more. And then that got me to how I need to take a break from coaching. Still continue on the self-development path, but I need to take a break from coaching and just allow myself to do the inner work without the external influence from somebody else.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot. I remember that conversation. Like I distinctly remember you telling me like I need a break, right? And it made me have a realization that I needed a break from all of it, right? Like not only coaching. So I did coaching. I only had one coach, but I did coaching. I was in Emerge, the mastermind group that we're a part of. Um, Reading audio books, podcasts, YouTube videos, all of this mindset and transformational type content. And you can only take so much in. And it became very overwhelming for me at one point in time. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I need a break from all of this, from consuming. So, like you said, I can kind of process, analyze, and actually implement this into my life. And I think that was huge. And I'm going to ask you this question, but I know for me, it it was like it was almost a productive form of analysis paralysis. I thought by consuming all of this information, I was doing something. I I was kind of right, like I was working on
Okay.
myself internally, but none of that actually matters until you actually take new action based on all of that information, But again, I was still at the point where I was kind of afraid to take like big action and take risk. So I was just delaying that by constantly consuming. So did you feel that you were in that same point or that same season where it's like, well, this makes me feel like I'm not doing nothing, but at the same time I'm not truly taking the action to get me closer to my goals?
Yeah, I was a professional at throwing courses and online seminars and meetings and all and coaching and whatever you can throw at it from an education standpoint. I was the master at doing that instead of acting.
Mm,
And and what I mean is, for me, I don't really learn anything until I do it. And so I could take all the seminars and courses and meetings and masterminds and all that. None of that's going to do anything for me until I start taking the steps. Like all those things could supplement, could add to, could boost, but unless I'm actually taking action, those things
yeah.
in the big scheme of things don't do anything. So I did all those things thinking that I was acting, and I think it was like even maybe a dopamine hit every time I did those things. Like I felt motivated, I felt good, and I felt like I was doing something. But it wasn't until really I quit coaching, and I don't recommend anybody just you know drop coaching just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
You got to recognize when you're at a point of maybe information overload, or when the information coming in is greater than the action that you're taking, then perhaps you got to take a break. And
Yeah.
that's where I was in.
For sure. I was in that same place, man. And it's hard when you're surrounded by entrepreneurs and people that are recommending books and different coaches and all of these things. And you see some of these guys, like they always have at least one coach. I know people in GoBundance who have at one point in time had like five different coaches, depending, mindset coach, a
Oh yeah.
personal trainer, and blah blah. It's like Jesus, like that's I can't even fathom that. Because I like to now like really take my time and process the information that I'm receiving, and that has helped me actually like by over consuming, pausing, cutting it off completely, and now being more intentional with what I'm consuming and actually using it and taking action with it. That's really like unlocked the recent growth that I've experienced. Because again, if you're consuming, you're not taking action, nothing is actually changing. It actually becomes really frustrating because for me, it was like I know what to do, but my life isn't changing. Why? It's because, well, I'm not actually doing it. It's the same thing where there's people that join a mastermind group, they make this investment, a substantial investment into a mastermind group or a coaching, whatever it may be, and then they just sit there consuming and expecting it to change their lives. And it's just like, that's not how this works. If you're just going to consume and not take action, you're wasting your time. But when it comes to the original question on this, like personal growth, can you identify like what, from a personal perspective, what was standing in your way of actually unlocking the success? Because it feels like from through our conversations, everything, we both had some like mental blocks that we had to overcome. So is there anything that was in your way first? And if so, what were the tactical things that you did to kind of overcome that?
Really quickly, and this I think will play into my answer as well. I want to go
Yeah.
back to just really quickly tie something together that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
I'm reading The Law of Abundance, and that book demonstrates abundance or compares it to the flow of electricity.
Mm,
And you need a positive and a negative charge to complete the circuit. The positive charge is taking action. And if abundance is to flow into your life, the positive charge is taking action. The negative side of the equation is being receptive to positivity and abundance and good thoughts and all that stuff. So where I had, and this is something that I recognized about myself, is that I was receptive. So that negative charge, that negative, part of the circuit I had, but instead of a positive charge on the application side, I think she calls it, I was at a negative because I wasn't taking
Mm.
action. And when the when she shows that a positive and a positive or a negative and a negative are represented in that circuit, energy just kind of like dies out. It doesn't complete the circuit. And so for me, the answer to your question is I wasn't taking action. That was a symptom. What the bigger problem was is that I had fear.
Mm.
I had fear of the unknown. I had fear of what my life would look like. As crazy as this sounds, I had fear that I didn't know what my life would look like if I did take action. I was successful, and I mean, it kind of it seems silly now that I'm talking about it, but I was afraid of success. Really, I didn't know what that life looked like. Like the life that I have kind of have ingrained in my head is all around struggle and lack and scarcity and worry and stress and anxiety, and and there's nothing special about that. Unfortunately, that's, I think,
Yeah,
how
that's common.
90% of the population operates right now.
Right.
And what reinforced that on a daily basis was the news, people I surrounded myself with,
Mm.
social media, and so it was like a self perpetuating loop. It was already in my head, and then I would go and reinforce it by what I surrounded myself with, as far as information I took in, people I surround myself with. And so I didn't see a way out of it. I just saw, like, this is the way it is. But there was something inside me. There was I'm thinking back to the "Sitting Around the Fire" song by Ram Dass, and he
Yeah.
talks about there was a little ember, still kind of going in the back of my mind or my soul, whatever it is, where I knew that there had to be a better way. And that's probably ultimately why I started coaching in 2021 and have kept going ever since then.
Yeah. Do you think that that you were saying, because you had said like I didn't know, I was afraid of success basically. Do you think that it was like you didn't feel worthy, you didn't feel that you deserved success, you didn't want to be seen? Like, was there any of that going on that you can think of? Because I know for me, like, that was a big part of it.
Yeah, I didn't want to be seen, for sure. I don't like a lot of attention. But shoot, what were the other examples that you had mentioned?
Worthy, deserving,
Worthy.
well.
Yeah.
Am I well? Worthy enough and lovable.
I I didn't feel worthy. I felt like there was almost like a negative connotation to people having money or success, in that
Mm.
they were selfish, they were, you know, greedy, they were whatever. And I haven't sat down and actually thought about these things in a long time, but it seems so silly now
Yeah.
that I had those thoughts. It was, I mean, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself and the reality of the world. And really, it was all ego. I mean, yes, I didn't feel worthy and all that, but I feel like those were components of ego, components of my ego trying to keep me safe and in a known, comfortable box that I can predict the outcomes. I know what this feels like. I know what this is. I've seen it through, generations of my family. Like I get this. What I don't get is, 100 steps beyond the life experience that anybody that I know has had. That's unknown. That's scary. And it's not even scary that it could go wrong. It's bad or anything. It's just scary because I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
That's it.
it's uncomfortable because it's unknown, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
I I think so I said that was a big part of it for me. And man, I don't know if it really was, now that we unpack that a little bit. I mean, definitely, but the way that I would summarize it, there was two big things that were standing in my way. One, first and foremost, was my relationship with money. Like
Hmm.
that was terrible. So I had what, we in the personal development world, I guess, call a scarcity mindset. Like there was never enough. When I would spend money or invest money, it was painful. It was super uncomfortable. I didn't like seeing it flowing out. I had like a squirrel mentality at that point in time. Like I'm just going to stack as much as I can. And any time that I lost a little bit, it would be super uncomfortable. And that's a really challenging place to be in, especially as a new entrepreneur, because it is inevitable most of the time that as a new entrepreneur, more money is going to be going out than coming in. So you have to have faith. I had to have faith that that wasn't going to be the case forever, that all of that money that was going out was going to come back to me tenfold. And I strongly believe now in the vibrations that we put out are the vibrations that we're going to receive. So if I'm putting out this negative vibration when it comes to money, it's going to continue to get pushed farther and farther away from me. And so I've programmed myself now into a mindset of abundance where I am confident that I let money flow out, and I'm confident that it will flow back in. And when I'm feeling that scarcity mindset creep back in, where I'm just like, oh God, like I'm spending too much and everything. And by like Callie and I are not irresponsible. We don't go blow money like on dumb shit that we don't need. But we're also trying to live our life, like life is short and we want to create memories and we want to travel and all of that stuff. So we've been doing more of that. But reading the law of attraction and implementing some of the exercises in that has been huge. So I look for evidence of abundance in my life each and every day when I journal, which is huge because it keeps me in that mindset. I created a desire statement from the law of attraction, which I read every single day. It's kind of like a mini vision. It's a very short like vision. And Think and Grow Rich, incredible book when it comes to creating that different vibration that you're putting out there. And then also The Game of Life and How to Play It, which is something that I just read. And one of the biggest things with that, because it's like a very spiritual book when it comes to manifestation and abundance, is asking God every day to carry that burden of lack for me. I think it's the way that it's said in the book, and the way that I do it every day is Christ, I ask that you carry this burden of lack so that I can move forward and prosper. And at first it's like I don't believe that stuff, right? Like I'm just reading these words, I'm just putting these words on paper. But the more that I do it and the more evidence that I find that it's working, the deeper my belief becomes and the more powerful that becomes. And ultimately what it was my subconscious thoughts weren't aligned with my goals. Like deep inside of me, you were talking about your heart, right? Thinking more with your heart. My brain was telling me that I could do it. My heart was like, no, you can't. And if your heart and your brain aren't aligned in those thoughts, it's never going to become reality. I had to reprogram those subconscious thoughts because that's where the vibration comes from. The vibration's coming from the heart, not the mind, right? That's what we're putting out to the universe. And I know this sounds woo woo to a lot of people out there, but if you believe it, it works. And that's what I have learned more than anything. But that subconscious realignment and programming those to work for me instead of against me and truly believing, it's like almost instantly when I finally felt it, I'm like, no shit, like I actually believe this. Like I am 100% confident that all of this is working for me. it was almost immediate, where then success started coming quickly. Like financially, I'm still working on that, but the opportunities have been pouring in since I've truly programmed those subconscious thoughts for myself.
I mean, you already mentioned it. This kind of stuff is woo woo, but I was gonna take a step back and explain some of it on a logical, rational, like earthbound way.
So the normies out there can understand it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think it's important because I think there are logical explanations for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, like I think back to a lot of different situations that I've been involved with in my life. If something is positive going, if something positive is happening in my life, it may be subtle, it might be strong, whatever, but I tend to desire more positive at that point. And I guarantee, other people listening to this can, have had that similar experience.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, when things are negative, if I just do what my emotions, my mind tells me to do, I want to seek out more negativity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if it's self reinforcing. I don't know if it's just I'm on that path in that vein of negativity, and it just wants to attract more. I don't know, but it seems like whichever negativity or positivity that I'm pursuing or is taking place at that given time, I want more of it. I'm invested in going in that direction. And so if you can intervene in yourself and in your own thoughts and purposely create positivity, create positivity in your own mind and get yourself in that path or that vein of positivity, you will want to attract more of it. It's
Yeah.
People can feel this in their everyday lives. Like take a step back from the woo woo stuff and just see how it plays out in your own lives.
Well, I mean, I agree with you, and here's a logical way to look at it, right? So if I'm operating in scarcity, where I'm very concerned that I don't have enough money and all of this stuff, it's going to prevent me from taking risks, because I can't take a risk if I'm stuck in this mindset and I don't believe that the risk is going to be returned. And maybe it won't. From a financial aspect, maybe it won't immediately. I look at my very first investment property that I bought. So my first rental property, I lost money on that. However, I took the risk. That allowed me to learn a ton of lessons when it came to not only just real estate in general, but also understanding that, hey, it's an investment of experience. I lost like, I don't know the exact number, but I probably lost like $10,000, I think, overall on that first rental property, which, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, really isn't that much money. Like, people have lost way
Loss
more.
of education.
Yeah, they've lost way more, but it got me unstuck, right? I actually took action. Had I and I was still battling scarcity at that point in time, like still really stuck in that mindset, but that was like the first big step that I took to kind of get me unstuck in that. If I was just like, nope, can't do it, that money is never going to come back to me, or it's going to be a bad investment, blah blah blah, I would have never built that momentum. And now it's only gotten better and better and better. But and I've learned so much, because now if I were to go back and look at that same investment property now, there's no way I would have bought it, right? I would have been like, nope, this and this, it's not going to cash flow enough, like there's too much over, or too many capital updates that need to be done and all of this stuff. So that, yeah, if you're stuck in that series, you're going to limit your risk, and without risk, you're never going to generate massive amounts of wealth. That's just truth.
And who knows? I don't know if it's because of the negative mindset that I have been in the majority of my life, but starting new things for me has always been difficult.
Yeah.
And what I have found in buying a business is that taking the leap, putting in the action, doing whatever it is that scares you, all of a sudden normalizes that thing once you do it.
Yeah.
And when you normalize it and you learn from it, you, for me at least, it makes me want to do more.
Yeah.
So it's really, going back 2.5 years to the beginning of that process for me of buying the business. It took me from a situation where I was like, oh shit, I can't do this. I don't want to do this, but I kind of do want to do this. And then having that internal battle with myself. And I should even back up prior to then. The the thought process or the desire to buy a business was strong in me, but the fear was so much stronger that it
Mm.
kept me just like looking in from the outside, like through a window, like, oh, that looks nice, I should do that, but then never going inside and actually doing it. And once I did it, like literally within 60 days, I got to a point where I looked around and I'm like, the fuck, this is easy. Like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
the hell was I
What was I
so
so
scared about?
afraid of?
Yeah.
Well,
And now it's normalized it to the point where like I want to do stuff 10 times, 100 times larger than that.
yeah. Yeah. We're going to, man. I also think like fear is an underrated motivator too. So we often talk about fear in a negative aspect. Like I'm afraid. So going back to my W-2 job, I was afraid to leave the safety and security and the lifestyle that I had built. But eventually what became greater was my fear of regret. I've shared this before, but I would I would imagine laying on my deathbed and talking to myself in that current time, being going like, dude, you like you pussy, like you never took the risk, you never bet on yourself, you never even attempted it and failed. And like me as that old man was like, you can deal with failure, you're going to be fine, but what you can't deal with, you can't do to me, is never try. Like, please don't do that to me, basically. And that fear of regret, eventually, as I would picture that regularly, I basically grew my fear of regret, where it was so big that it dwarfed the fear of leaving the comfort and the stability, the fear of failure. And then I was drawn towards that fear of regret. And now I'm very confident that things are going to work out incredibly. But now, even worst case scenario, shit doesn't work out. At least I fucking tried, right? Like, at least I tried. And I can live with that. You have something on that? Because I wanted to ask you on another quick question.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something I was going to say earlier. This is more of like an overarching thought process and comment, but for me, what stopped me from taking action for a long time as well was me thinking that I had more time. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
so there's a lot wrong with that. For for me, I got to a point where I realized that if I keep saying that, I will never do anything.
You're just kicking the ball down the road.
But then as I realized that, and I was like, in it, I really came to terms with it. Like, if I keep saying that, I will never do anything. The second thought that came to mind was that, I don't want to finally start taking action when I'm 80 and I'm dead by 82. Like, it makes more sense to me to do this stuff now so that I live in that, dream life, that successful life, that new life that I've never experienced before for like 30 years, 40 years, whatever it may be. Like, that's what I want. I don't want to all of a sudden put stuff off for so long and then just be able to dip into that new life for just a couple of years. Like, I want to be in there for decades.
I love that. And I just saw something you reminded me of there. I just saw something the other day. The average life expectancy in the United States is 76 years, and people think that 50 is midlife. 38. I'm 38. I am in midlife right now for all intents and purposes. I'm pretty freaking healthy, so I'm confident that I'll probably live a little bit longer than that, but still, like you said, man, this 38 years went by really fucking fast. And I know that the next 38 years is going to go by incredibly faster. We were talking, me, you, and Chris, and Chris were talking about that yesterday, just how, man, boom, like, especially once you're out of that W-2 world and you're doing shit that you love, that doesn't necessarily always feel like work, man, these days and weeks and stuff go by so fast. Like, today's Saturday. I blinked and it was like a week
I
went
know.
by. It was crazy. I'm grateful for that because I'd much rather be doing things that I love and time be going by fast than going back to corporate life where I would stare at the clock for fucking 9 hours a day praying that I could get home to veg out and do it all over again the next day. But definitely one. So I got two questions I wanted to do before we wrap up today. But number one, so I think that belief in ourselves is really key to this. Truly unlocking that subconscious belief that you can accomplish your goals. Like, fuck. I wrote the last 2 days. So I started yesterday and I said, within the next 5 years, I'm going to be making $2.5 million a year. And then today I wrote, within the next 4 years and 364 days, I'm going to be making $2.5 million a year. And tomorrow, 4 years, 363 days, right? And so on and so forth. I fucking believe that shit now. I 100% believe that. But going back, I don't know, let's say just 6, 7, 8 months, whatever, going back to the past, there's no fucking way. I might have wrote it, but I didn't actually believe it. Now I believe it. I'm assuming that you believe in yourself much more now than you have in the past. So is there, if you were me, or if you were coaching me, if I'm like, hey man, like I'm just really like I don't believe in myself, there's no way that I could do this. Is there one thing that you would tell me, one piece of advice that you would give to me to help me build that belief in myself?
Yeah, I do have one thing.
Sweet.
In the law of abundance, like I was talking about earlier, it's that application part of the circuit. It's when you turn that from negative to positive, and so you're actually taking action. Worlds open up, possibilities open up, your abilities open up. When you start taking action and you see what you're capable of, it blows the doors off of lack and limitation and, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that.
Man.
Because a lot of times I feel like when people are stuck and I can't do this, or I can't figure this out, whatever, it's because they're in their head and they're not doing it.
Mm.
If you take step by step, and you and I have talked a lot about this, like I jumped to step 28 instead of step one. And when, and that's good to a certain extent for future planning, but when you're starting something, that's awful. That just stops you in your tracks. So I believe in just concentrating on step 1 and 2, and then once you get there, step 3 and 4, and then once you get there, and so on and so on. That opens up the doors to possibility of yourself, but then also as a byproduct, it gives you confidence. It gives you confidence in the fact that you can figure it out, that you can do it, that you not only confidence, but it gives you evidence. It gives you evidence that the steps you're taking can result in learning, can result in, you performing a new skill, you operating a business, buying a business, whatever it may be. So I think it all comes back down to action and having faith in your ability to figure things out.
I love that. And yeah, you have to take action, and that evidence is key and I think that's a good thing to do before you even take action. Look back at your life and find all of the evidence to support the fact that you've done hard shit. Like all of us at some point of time have made it through really challenging periods of our life. And if you look back and you find that evidence, it's like, oh, okay, well, I did that. Like I trained for a 10-mile obstacle race in the sand. I accomplished that goal. I made it through basic training. I made it through 8 years in the military. I made it through 11 years in the corporate world, which I fucking hated, and I still did a pretty damn good job of it. It's like, oh, wait a second. Like, yeah, I can do hard things. So I think that's great. I also say I'll take it a step further. So if I were to talk to somebody that was stuck before, like they were really having a challenge taking action, I would say you got to surround yourself with those people that believe in you already. That has been huge for me. And that's really, I think, what unlocked this maybe more than anything for me recently. Like all the woo woo stuff that I was talking about is was like laying the foundation and laying the brickwork. And then, like I said, opportunities started opening up. And so this was last week. So I was in Austin. I went to the Key Moves Mastermind, and then I went to our GoBundance regional meetup in Dripping Springs. And I decided, so man, this kind of combines all of it. So I decided to take an action. I basically decided to remove our friend Jamie from from a role. So he's the owner of GoBundance Emerge, and I was basically like, "Hey, man, I got to fire you from this job because you're bottlenecking things." Ultimately, with love, of course, and from a place of service. Like I want to serve Jamie, I want to serve our this community. So I was like, hey, I think you need to hand this over to me. And it's the connection piece between us and elite and champions. Like, hey, let me own that because, you're too busy, honestly. And this is a huge value for the Emerge community that we need to be doing a better job with. And so I took it upon myself to tell him that. And he was like, his response was, I've really been thinking about featuring you more in the community, meaning getting me more FaceTime, more time with elite and champions, those guys at the higher levels of entrepreneurship. And what I thought in that moment was, damn, like this guy believes in me enough to trust me with the brand that he has built, GoBundance Emerge, and not only that, but the relationships that he has built. Jamie has incredible relationships with these higher level entrepreneurs, and he trusts me to represent him. Because if I connect you with somebody and I'm like, hey, Josh is this really super great fucking dude, blah blah blah, and then you turn out to be a piece of shit, well, that's on me, right, for connecting you and trusting that. He trusts me with those relationships, and I'm like, damn, I'm like, this guy believes in me. So Jamie is, for anybody who doesn't know Jamie, he's a very successful entrepreneur. He's a very big personal brand now. The guy's crushing it, and he's somebody that I look up to greatly. He's an incredible leader, and he trusts me. Like, that's crazy, right? So I'm like, how can I not believe in myself? Like, I have guys like Jamie believing in me and trusting me. So like, what am I doing? So my advice is, if you don't believe in yourself, borrow that belief from other people. And if you don't have people around you that believe in you, I think the answer to that is twofold. Either one, you have been a piece of crap and there is no reason to believe in you, and you
You
need
got
to
to change
work
your
on that.
circle.
Yeah, yeah. Or you need to change your circle. Yeah, you need to get around people that do believe in you and that believe in the person that you want to become as well. So yeah, that's my piece of advice. So anything to add to that? Because I got one more question
Yeah,
for you.
yeah. I think in your example, I think you're. I love it and I agree with it. I think you're, and maybe you didn't explain everything that you feel about the situation, but in your explanation, it felt like you were just looking externally for
Mm,
validation. What you also need to think about is why that guy trusts you, why
yeah,
Jamie trusts you. What have you done prior to that to cause him to do that? And also give yourself a pat on the back for doing all of that that allowed Jamie to trust you.
yeah, 100%. So action, actually taking action is a huge one, right? I think that's key. Imperfect action, man. I've taken so much action and made so many pivots and made so many mistakes and failures, but that shows guys like Jamie that I'm a good investment of their time, because I'm not just a consumer. Like, hey, I'm going to take this advice that you've given to me and I'm actually going to use it, whether it works for me or not. I'm willing to listen and to be coachable and all of that. And I would say, I guess that's really it. Is I listen and I apply and I report back. I'm like, hey, I did that. I applied this to my content. Like, whatever advice it is that he gives me, I always take it. And the only way I wouldn't is if it didn't align with my values. But if it was somebody who was going to give me advice that didn't align with my values, I probably wouldn't be talking to them in the first place. So, but yeah, it's literally a matter of that. I actually take action. The worst, I've had people in my life that would come to me repeatedly. I can think of one person specifically right now, and they just came to me, and I just basically, I didn't ignore them, but I just didn't open up the door for me to provide advice or anything like that, because I'm like, I told you last time, it's on you now. Like, I don't feel bad for you. But there have been multiple people that would come to me regularly seeking advice, financial advice, personal development advice, whatever, and then they wouldn't do it. And then they would come back to me seeking more advice, and then they wouldn't do it. And eventually I'm like, I'm an idiot. Like, I'm an idiot if I keep wasting my breath and time and energy on this person because they don't fucking listen, right? So yeah, and you have to set that boundary too. I won't name names, but they've had relationship issues for a very, very long time, and they would come to me and I would give them advice, and then nothing would change. And the last time this person came to me, they were venting, and I'm just like, okay. I literally, I was very short in my responses. I'm like, I told you last time, like, this is on you now. You continue to make the same fucking choices and expecting different results. And you're a poor investment of my time when it comes to this. I still love that person deeply. Like, I'm not like cutting that person out of my life or anything like that, but I'm done giving them advice or listening to them vent at all. I'm like, I don't have time for it.
Yeah.
Um, Last question. So I'm not even an entrepreneur yet. I'm in my W-2 job, and I'm getting to that point where that fear of regret is starting to outweigh the fear of failure. What is the one thing that you would tell me to focus on being a very new entrepreneur or about to start my entrepreneurial journey? Like, what's the one thing you would work on, you would fix? Like, could you give me something?
I think it all goes back to self development and self discovery. I think it's so many people have been brainwashed into, you know, public education system, the corporate America, universities, all that kind of stuff, that they can't think for themselves. They have not in the forces that we have playing against us don't just aren't just limited to those things that I mentioned. It's parents, it's siblings, it's extended family, it's what it's lineage. If you were born to be an entrepreneur and you've had this feeling ever since you were a child, but you have no example within your lineage of anybody that's
Mm,
taken a risk, the deck is stacked against you. You got to do some major internal work to get to that point that you will take the jump. So I think it all starts with that. I think it's some deep soul searching, some like quite literally like if this is your life, you have to like go through periods of like wiping stuff away and wiping off layers to get to the core of who you actually are, so
mm,
that you're not operating from all these things that people told you should care about and you should be and you should concern yourself with. You got to wipe all that stuff away so that you can expose your true self, which will be painful because it's been protected for so long from all this conditioning and ego and lessons and all that stuff, that you just got to go through that process, feel the pain, normalize it, internalize it, analyze it, and accept it into your being in some way. And once you get to that place, I feel like anybody will be unstoppable in living their authentic life.
Man, that's good. Yeah, that's a good one. Getting down to that core and figuring out who the fuck you are. I mean, that's a big one for sure. That's been key for me, and it's a process like that. None of the stuff that we're talking about happens overnight. Like, you can jump into a new circle of people that believe in you, but it's going to take a while before you actually believe in yourself. Same thing with discovering yourself. You might discover yourself 6 fucking times and then be like, oh shit, this is it. And then all of a sudden I got to do it again. But So I agree with everything that you said. I think for me, it's two things. So, and one of these things I did, and it's a reason that I've made it so far. And this was something I did before I became an entrepreneur. Was I joined Go Abundance Emerge. It doesn't have to be that mastermind group, by the way. Like, I'm not trying to sell anybody on anything, but surround yourself with those people that are living those lives that you actually want to live, or are at least on the path to doing that, because that's going to be huge. They're going to be the ones that you lean on, that believe in you, that see, the things that you don't see yet. So I think that's huge. And then for me, the other one would be to work on your relationship with money, like work, because I look back at it. I was at a job paying me very well. I had zero financial concerns at that point in time. I mean, I didn't have the money that I wanted to live the life that I lived, but bills were paid. I was good. It would have been a lot easier, probably, I believe, to work on my relationship with money when money was still flowing in faster than it was flowing out. Because now it's like, okay, I cut off the supply. It's like learning to swim. Like, I don't know, I can't think of a good analogy right now, but I cut off the supply of money, and now I'm like, oh shit, like this is terrifying, and now I got to figure out how to work. It was like trying to fix a relationship, in your, like, trying to fix your marriage by leaving. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, I got nothing coming in, and now I got to work on this. And the way that I would do that is two different things. So I'll recommend three different books, and I mentioned them all before, but Think and Grow Rich, The Law of Attraction, and The Game of Life and How to Play It. And it's not only reading those books, it's actually doing the shit in them that it says, the exercises, the stupid little woo woo shit. Like, just do it, even if you don't believe it. And eventually, if you do it long enough, you will start to see it work and you'll believe in it. And then the other thing is, anytime you're feeling in that scarcity mindset where it's like, oh my God, like money's flowing out, it's not flowing in, give some away. Whatever you can afford to give away, give it away. Give it away to a charity, give it to somebody that you know that needs it. Like, I did that. So heading into that Key Moves mastermind on Tuesday, I started feeling that, right? Like, I spent some money, and like, oh my God, and I don't know if I'm going to close any sales or whatever. So I went on and I went to my friends back home, have a 501(c) now, and it supports veterans. I went on and I donated $100, and sure enough, I made $500 that day, and potential of now 2,000 total from that event that I'll be bringing in. It's me. Maybe that works for me, and maybe it doesn't work for other people. But I feel like it creates the space to receive by letting it flow out and going to a good cause.
Yeah. Really quickly, last thing that I'll mention on this is I feel like our lives are way too comfortable now, especially, well, I shouldn't say especially in a W 2, because in a W 2, at any given time, you could be let go.
Right.
Nobody should be that comfortable. But we settle into comfort in a W 2. And that's a real soul crusher if people realize that or not. They I think comfort causes you to, and especially a consistent paycheck with benefits and all that, and pizza that they bring in every night.
Oh, your life
Yeah.
sucks. Here's a pizza party.
So that that kind of stuff will cause you to give up on your dreams if you really desire comfort. And you leaving your job and just having to figure it out. Me buying a business and having to figure it out. Those things may seem a certain way on the surface, but actually what happens in those situations is you find yourself. You
Mm,
have no choice but to figure out what you're worth, or not what you're worth, maybe what you're worth, but what you're made of.
yeah, you're metal.
And it's like purposely seeking out adversity, I believe, is one of the strongest self-development, self-discovery things that you can do in this world.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just throw yourself in, no safety net, and just figure it out.
And there's a reason why all of these super successful entrepreneurs you see talk about this shit. Like, this isn't anything new that Josh and I have developed. We've learned this from super successful entrepreneurs, but
but also
even,
doing
what's that?
but also doing it.
Yeah, doing it for ourselves. But it's like you look at these people who have created massive amounts of financial success and personal success. And I know for me, I'm like, like meditation, that's dumb. Like spirituality, how's that gonna help? Like, blah, blah. And then I'm like, eventually, you're surrounded by these people. Like, I'm surrounded by these guys. I mean, I'm looking at presentations, from guys worth $200 million that I'm connected with. I can walk up and talk to and shake their hand, talking about all of these things, and it's like, damn, like there's got to be something to this, right? Like it wouldn't be around for this long. Some of those books that I've read have been, I think the Game of Life and How to Play It was published in like 1925 and it's millions and millions of copies. It's like, there's got to be something here. Otherwise it wouldn't work or it wouldn't be in existence. So yeah, that's part of it. And that goes back to surrounding yourself with the right people, because it's one thing to watch a YouTube video. I can watch a YouTube video of David Osborne, for example, the 200 million guy that I was just talking about, but I don't get, it's not the same as being in the room with him, because through a YouTube video, I'm not in his atmosphere. I'm not in that vibration of success. When you're in the room and you take those little golden nuggets of advice and all of it's like, oh shit, okay, like I can feel it. I can feel his belief in this shit, and that wears off on you, or on me. So no, yeah, I 100% agree. But this is what we want to talk about. This is the type of shit that we want to talk about. We want to help people, men like us that, are desiring to be entrepreneurs, or just be better men, be better versions of themselves, find themselves. I think a good way to do that is honestly through entrepreneurship, because like you said, you don't really have a fucking choice. You either figure it out or you fail. And I'm not going to fail. Like, that is not going to happen. And there will be failures along the way. There will be setbacks. There will be mistakes, but I'm never going to fail, because I will not quit. I will not quit rediscovering myself, investing in myself, working on our businesses. That's just not going to happen. It's not a choice.
Yeah, one I said.
That's all right. I said I was going to wrap up at 8:30 and it's 8:50. So
Um, I've never really done a poll or asked a big group of entrepreneurs this question, but I'd be curious how many entrepreneurs align with the fact that faith plays a big role in their business. My thought is you have to have faith, not religious faith, not anything like that, but like faith in something you can't see, faith in
100.
your ability to figure stuff out, faith in the um, the idea that things will work out, faith in the fact that this new business idea or whatever idea you have will be successful. I I think that's an under discussed, underrepresented topic in the entrepreneurial space. And maybe I'm just not watching the correct stuff, but it feels like faith is a huge part of the process in becoming an entrepreneur.
100% agreed. That was the biggest theme for our regional event last Friday, was spirituality. I
Nice.
mean, and you had three totally different guys, right? All very successful, but three total. One guy was a former Army Ranger officer, combat veteran, Afghanistan, Iraq. Another guy was from Australia, looked like a hippie surfer. And then that we had another guy who was Indian, and very different people, but all attributed spirituality and faith to
Nice.
a huge portion of their success. Christianity, psychedelics, and a belief in a higher power. So three different approaches to spirituality, but all were like, yeah, absolutely. Like, you have to have that, because there are just going to be some times where you got to let go and surrender. And if you don't have a belief in a higher power of some sort, that's fucking scary, right? And there's nothing to let go of and surrender to, so you just keep trying to grind through it and driving yourself into the ground, man.
Yeah, if you have nothing outside there, all of it just rattles around
Yeah.
in here, and that can turn bad very quickly.
Yeah, and now I can just say, God, like I need some help, man. Like I need you to help me. I can talk to him, I can ask him things. And what's cool is like through those conversations with God, I mean, it's basically he just directs me to the answer myself, right? Like I'm talking to him and he's responding internally inside of me. And virtually every single time it's like, oh, there's the answer right there. And some people will be like, well, that's just you having a conversation with yourself. Well, if I'm just talking to myself, I'm fucking crazy. If
No,
I'm talking
no,
to God, I'm
that's
spiritual.
that's you being able to set everything else aside and being able to hear your intuition.
Yeah,
And I feel like intuition has some faith component that I don't understand,
absolutely.
but
It's the greater consciousness in my belief, right? Like that intuition, that is God, that is the universe, that is the higher power. It's whatever. I think that's exactly what we were talking about when we were talking about the heart and the brain, right? Like the
oh
brain,
yeah,
that's where human beings are so fucking complicated. We have consciousness, we are connected to a higher level of consciousness, but we are also a biological animal. So there's a lot going on up here that's trying to process everything else that's going
override.
on. Like it's almost like, you know, the adage, you don't have to tell a bear it's a bear, right? Like I don't think the bear's thinking about much other than being a fucking bear. Human beings, we got a million different directions that we're being pulled in, and we have this consciousness and faith aspect, and it gets complicated and complex. But I feel that the more I can turn this off
Yeah,
for periods of time, the better my life becomes, because I'm taking actions from here that actually, and this is where happiness exists. This is where fulfillment and joy and all of those things exist. So if I'm listening to this more, it's going to lead me in the right direction. This complicates things because there's so much more going on. It's like food, water, shelter, like all of those things that are important, of course, but it gets complicated. But anyway, yeah. So no, dude, this was awesome. I'm
yeah,
very excited for us to. Hey, this is a good example. We've been doing this shit for almost 2 years now, and we're finally like, okay, I think we know which
yeah.
direction we want to take and who we're meant to serve and what we believe in and all of those things. So I'm excited to do more of this stuff, and you know, and we'll tie some other things into it here and there if it feels right. But ultimately, we just want to help people live better lives, and I think the
Absolutely.
personal growth is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Later, brother.
All right. See ya.
I stopped.